Hey folks, it's Sharon Blanchard. Welcome to Who's That Leader in the Mirror? For over 30 years, I have dabbled in the leadership field that culminated in a search for the perfect leadership philosophy. But as I like to say, I'm still growing up and I have so much to learn. So partly because I live in a remote area of the world, I've decided to make this podcast a shared classroom where we'll take a deep dive into leadership. How being authentic doesn't necessarily mean you're a better leader. We'll have conversations around identity, ego, and humility, about being courageous and value-centered leadership. We'll chat with leaders who understand that who they are, their identity, their sense of self, values, and beliefs are integral to their leadership approach. They're leaders who want to make changes in their approach to become a better version of themselves and realize that they need to reconcile who they are with what they do and how that's golden. It's the golden key to living their leadership approach authentically. Today we are joined by Leader in the Mirror, Johanna Alphonso. And I have to say, thematically, everything about her oozes grace and leadership. So who is Johanna Alphonso? Well, she's from Ajax, Ontario, Canada, studied a Bachelor of Arts joint major in Psychology and Sociology at St. Francis Xavier University in Nova Scotia, Canada. She was a varsity athlete where she captained the team to 2 national championships, actually winning 3 national championships in her time with the women's rugby team. During this time, Jo was awarded Conference Rookie of the Year. Get ready for it. 4-time conference champ, a 4-time University Sport All-Canadian, a 3-time conference MVP, 5-time conference All-Star, 1-time national bronze medalist, 3-time national champion. She was St. Ajax Female Athlete of the Year and was also inducted as the first female rugby player to the Janson Leader of Distinction. In 2020, Jo was a student assistant coach for the St. Ajax women's rugby team while completing her education degree. She then went on to coach the girls and boys high school team at the school where she was teaching. In 2021, Jo was selected as a mentor coach for the Black Canadian Coaches Association's inaugural Black Female Coach Mentorship Program. She is currently the assistant coach for a women's club program where she lives and is navigating leadership within the education system as she pursues her master's in administration and policy and culturally responsive pedagogy. I have a wee caveat. Jo is a close family friend, and you might even catch her calling me Mama Blanche, and we love her. She's amazing, as you'll soon find out. Welcome, Jo. Well, hello, Jo. So excited to have you here on our podcast. And, I have to say our, because I know it's not me alone. It's a community, it's a group, it's beautiful people in my life and in my professional world and in my personal world that, that for me over my 54 years of life, I have had positive and challenging experiences with. And so those are the folks that I'm reaching out to. And so just feel really blessed to have you with us today.
Yeah, awesome.
Jo's coming from Ontario, from Toronto, just outside of Toronto, Ajax. And just a little caveat to everyone out there listening. I know Jo very personally. I feel like she's my daughter, part of our family, my daughter's best friend. And Jo, you've been through some incredible journeys. People automatically looked at you when you stepped onto campus and just saw that innate, beautiful woman leader, female, right? And reached out to you. And you became a huge leader on campus. And I know before those days, I didn't know you before then, but I know you probably were then. And we'll continue. And you're just at the kind of cusp of your professional career, having graduated a few years ago. So just totally excited to have you here. Again, this podcast is really about just informal chats about leadership. I know, we've got the academics of leadership, but I really want to just get into real stuff, authentic stuff.
Yeah.
And not the BS stuff, sorry to say it.
Yeah.
But, just to really talk about leadership and what it means to you. And so we can have maybe some gems that folks can take away. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome. First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Like you said, you're like my second mom. So very comfortable to have a conversation like this. And like you said, no BS. So I'm excited.
One of the things I've really realized in my own career over however many, I've already told you my age, but it's about really keeping it real. And a lot of my research is about identity and self and keeping that ego at the door, right? Like, just like, how do we just be those authentic individuals that we want to be, that we strive to be, right? And so I think when we start to have conversations about it and continue to have conversations about it, we're not all perfect. We're all just trying to get by in this world, and support each other, especially, right? As women, um, and men. And, I always, back in my practice at the university setting, whenever students would come into my office, I would always say, that's someone's daughter, that's someone's son, that's someone's father, grandfather, brother. And so I just thought, because we all come from a place, where what is our world view? And so if you were to describe kind of that perspective, what you bring, your worldview, what does that look like?
Well, I'm first generation of my family, Canadian. So my parents are actually from South America, Guyana to be exact. And I grew up in a very multicultural area. Of course, I'm a Black female as well, so that brings a whole different world perspective. And growing up, I was always kind of like, not the outsider, but I was always different. I was always big my whole life, like stature wise. And I was always the tallest in my class or the biggest in my class. So I always had to find ways to be okay with myself within the context of social norms and things like that. So I think that my outlook has obviously been impacted by all those things, being first generation Canadian, being Black female, and being just visibly different than my peers. So
wow, that's a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of perspective, a lot of identities.
And some of us just have a little tidbit, right? Add in all the other stuff on top of that, right?
Yeah.
What has enabled you to just kind of, navigate that world for you?
Well, I feel like you're kind of forced into it. At one age or another, you're kind of forced to deal with those things. For example, like when I was a kid, growing up around your family, like before you even enter school, that your family's what's normal to you, right? Then you head out into the world and you realize, hey, I'm actually a Black female and I have to navigate this world a little bit differently than others who don't have my same perspective. And that translated when I went to university too. I think a whole different culture shock. I was the first one to navigate university away from my family, and the first of that in Canada. So the education system in itself, which is what I work in today, like it was a whole new world for my family. So it was almost some things that as I grew up, I was forced into learning and navigating. So it was almost like rites of passages as I went through life.
Yeah. And probably along the way, and if it's okay if I make a wee assumption, compromising a bit of sense of self in that journey, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. You kind of want to portray what the world wants to see you as, right? You want to fit that mold that everyone wants you to fit into, especially when you're just getting by and you're just trying to find your way. And that again is compromising to who you truly are within, just to try to change yourself to fit in certain aspects or certain environments. But as I grew and I graduated university, even at university, I realized like I'm pretty great. Like you just realizing that you're great in yourself, and just coming to terms that I don't need to fit anyone else's mold, because I'm not this bad person or this ill-willed person that wants to is out for harm or anything like that. But I'm a genuine, kind, caring person, and that should be enough for me internally, and should be enough for those who are in my life, or those who I may lead, or those students who are in my classroom and things like that.
Amen. It takes some people a lifetime to get there. I'm still, right? Like, who am I?
Yeah.
Right? I'm still trying to figure that out, having a bit of an identity crisis.
Yeah, well, I think that's also a journey. Like your identity also changes, and I feel like we don't take that into consideration too much. Like we always think we have to be this one way or else no one will like us anymore, or this is how they knew me when I was 21, so I have to be that 21-year-old that they knew. Or So it's a continuous acceptance and recreation of your identity.
Right. And the courage not to conform, right? Which
Yes.
for you was
Yeah.
survival, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Listen, one of the things I really noticed about you is that people completely navigate. I mentioned this when we just started toward you because of that. People say, are leaders born, or are they, are they bred, or can you learn to be a great leader? All of my research is about the individual, right? What makes leadership great is the individual. And I get in trouble for saying this because leadership workshop kind of, big organizations that do lots of leadership stuff, don't like to hear me say this, but I mean, I say it with gentleness.
Yeah.
But, you can go to 1,000 million leadership workshops or courses, but will it make you a better leader? It probably will give you better kind of methodology and understanding and tools. But when it really, really comes down to it, it's about who you are. What makes you a great leader, your values, your, all of those beautiful things about your identity, that self. And so if you're going to think about, and I know you are in that frame, in the sense of knowing and understanding your capability to support and help and guide others in a positive, proactive way. Right. I've just answered my question, I think. Why do you think people just navigate toward you? What is it about you? Even though forget what I just said.
So, well, I think that the phrase, well, I went through leadership courses in university and post university, but also we did a leadership academy at Ajax where we went through leadership, and they say leaders are made. You can make someone into a leader. And I think to an extent that's true, but there are some qualities that people have that others may not be as strong in, that actually make them better leaders. I think a lot of adversity and having to lead yourself out of adversity is something that almost creates you into a leader. So for me, being when I was younger, both my parents fell sick. So my dad had cancer when I was in grade 6, and my mom had a blood clot that put her into the hospital for a few weeks at a time. And it was just me and my brothers at home. And I'm the only girl, the traditional gender roles fell into place. And I had to, do everything around the house, make sure my brothers were fed, make sure my family was fed, doing all those things. So that pretty much led into me leading myself forced me to lead myself in order to help lead my family. And then it translated to sport. And that's where I found my love of rugby. It translated into that sport, and people just felt safe with me. To them, I knew everything, or I could make everything right. And to me, I'm freaking out, okay, what are we going to do next? But I have to act calm because panic doesn't help anyone, right? So I just felt like people flocked to me because I was a sense of safety. And then once you're that sense of safety, people are vulnerable with you, which means that they're comfortable enough to make mistakes. They're comfortable enough to try new things, comfortable enough to be creative, which essentially makes that team or that group or that workplace a better place, because now everyone's working on trying new things, on building themselves in order to make the team better. And now you're not working just to get the goal done, but you're working for each other.
And Joe, you're back in that kind of situation right now, aren't you? You've come home.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Family again.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you talked about vulnerability. Tell me about vulnerability.
For me, vulnerability is something that's where growth happens. In order to be a better teacher, to be a better athlete, which is the places where I have experience, to be a better student, you have to be vulnerable and be able to recognize what you don't know and not afraid to ask or seek guidance or be a better help to yourself because you're too scared to ask, or that vulnerability opens up. It's almost like a flower opening up. I see it as like, you only get to see the beauty of that flower as it opens, right? If it's closed, you don't get to see the full beauty, but you know it's there, right? That vulnerability.
That's a beautiful analogy. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah. So that vulnerability to me is like that flower opening up, and you finally see the beauty. You finally see what you're capable of. You finally see the things that you can amount to and the people who are there for you and things like that. So yeah, vulnerability is a very big step in growth, in personal growth, leadership growth, etc.
Absolutely. I love that analogy, because most people, when they think of the word vulnerable, we have negative context associated with it because of past experience. Whereas really, as you journey with vulnerability and understand, how that emergent flower is a beautiful way to describe it, because when you put yourself in that place, which is not an easy place, what emerges are the beautiful blooms.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Yeah. Oh,
yeah, I think so much we were taught to be scared of vulnerability, like because of how society is formed, and you mess up and you're out, or like you don't know what to do, that means you're not supposed to be here, or like you're almost force fed this idea that vulnerability is such a scary thing and you should stay away from it. But coming to grips with the fact that vulnerability is needed in order for growth, for you to be better at anything you do, that's a big thing. I encourage people to look into their vulnerability within leadership, within their own personal lives.
And you hear a lot, in people talking about being, having the ability to be vulnerable so that it enables you to make mistakes and to learn and to grow from that. But as you just mentioned, I know for me, in my experience, making a mistake was like, oh my gosh, right? I'm going to lose my job if I make a mistake.
Yeah.
If I make two mistakes, I'm a big, working in an academic environment my entire career, and right, you just don't make mistakes. So it's drilled into you, and it's so hard to just kind of dissolve all of those layers around you that built up over time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I keep thinking, I know I'm going to say my age again. How many times am I going to say my age? But I'm still trying to, right? Yeah, and not go into that hardened place, right? Where and I think that's the challenge, is that those external forces that guide us are not always, we have to make money, we have to bring home the bacon, we have goals, we have achievables in our jobs and our homes and our volunteer work and in our lives. And so there's only a certain amount of ability to make mistakes without people really judging you, right? We don't have this culture where we're helping people bloom, we're helping people with vulnerability to become.
We don't yet have that culture of grace as yet.
That's I love you. Oh my gosh. That culture of grace.
Yeah.
It really is. Oh, I love it. Okay, we talked a little bit about this just before we started recording, because one of the things I wanted you to think about was, that the greatest, somebody in your life who you really ascribe to, who has great, who has been a leader, who has had a really positive impact on you, and just to have some thought about that, and to think about, how has that impacted you?
Yeah. So when we brought that up before, I was thinking back, like, who could have been the person who I found my leadership with. Like, I explained a little bit about me being forced into certain leadership positions, but the person I really looked up to was my dad. Like, he was like an in-house example of a leader. So instead of like maybe looking to a coach who's external, or you see them in a certain setting only, like I got to see my dad lead in almost every facet of his life, from work. He was a bank manager, so he was leading his team. Then he'd come home with his stories, tell us his stories, what he had to fix today, how he handled these situations. Then I saw him lead at church, which he was an assistant pastor, how he mentored certain people within the church with whatever issues they may have had. I got to see him navigate coaching. He was my soccer coach when I was younger. And he helped coach my basketball team with my other coach. I got to see him in that aspect, but then I also got to see a leader behind closed doors. So when the stage is not there, and he still led with that grace, that love, that light that I was able to witness in every aspect. And I think that made the biggest impact on me in knowing, like, when I was forced into these leadership positions, I knew I had to act like that, and it would be okay. Or I knew I had to act like that and people would be at least safe and sound, So he was the epitome of leadership when I was growing up.
You have said grace a few times.
Yes.
When I was working on my dissertation not too long ago, and just in academia, it's not, people don't talk about love, or they don't, I remember one of the hardest things was I had to define spirituality. Gosh, if we just started to talk about grace and leadership, what is that, right?
Yeah.
What is grace and leadership?
Yeah, so I think grace is just being able to give people second chances without judgment, third chances without judgment. A lot of the times we head into things we don't head into things looking to fail or looking to not do right? So imagine taking that idea, putting it into the people you're leading. You're not heading into something to fail, and if you do, it happens, right? And you would hope that someone would give you that grace. Passing that on to people who you are leading should be the same way, right? You want to emanate that empathy, right? You want to push out that empathy, which to me is that grace to try again. I'm a Christian, so from my background, we hear about grace growing up in church all the time, but you never really know what it means until you see someone give you that grace. You see someone say, you know what, it's okay, we can try again. In my classroom setting, like, I'm a high school teacher and I teach history. When my students don't get it the first time, I don't hammer down like, that's it, you're done, fail, right? We have to go over it again, like help the students understand. Maybe it's explaining it in a different way. Maybe it's having another student explain it to them, or giving them some extra material to read through. It's always another chance at the task or at the situation. And I know, like, for certain dire situations, like, for example, in the sports context, you don't have another chance at, like, a national championship, right? So you may have another chance, and your daughter Allison and I were lucky enough to have that second chance and
Do you
third
think
chance.
You were filled with grace when you were playing rugby out in Alberta in a foot of snow?
Yeah. See, I feel like those are, like, the grace that me and my leadership at X have shown before we got to that point was what enabled us to actually win those national championships, right? It's the grace that someone knows that you have their back, so that they can perform in these dire situations, or these situations that we perceive as dire, right? You've showed them grace at practice. You show them grace while they're giving you or telling you about what personal things they're going through. You show them that you're there for them. All that grace builds you up to perform in that setting. So I think, even though we think about grace, certain situations don't allow us to have grace, a lot of situations and choices leading up to that point do allow us to have grace.
One of the things when I had to define love for my own work, because the way we think about love, like, right, so how we think about love, I'll back up a little bit, right? In terms of the world, right? We think of romantic love. We don't think of, the choice to, love is a choice. We choose to love. We choose to act. And that's kind of, the definition, it's a choice, right? And so when what you just said really resonated with me, because it's like, in those moments of grace, we can also turn away, can't we? I feel like we're going down a really awesome Christian road, but which there's nothing wrong with. But it's so true, because it's so, when we think of our humanity and our humanism, what makes us awesome individuals when they say, go across that bridge, and if you turn around and no one's behind you, well, have you been a good leader? Are you doing your job?
Yeah.
Right. But what makes people follow you? Right. It's that authentic piece. It's that choice. You make a choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have, I used to say, it's very dramatic, but that fiscal gun to, my head, right? So I had to do hard things and make hard decisions. And one colleague at a university where I worked called me the bulldozer. But it was that, who was I, right? Who am I today? And it wasn't who I wanted to be. So how did I reconcile that across, all of Sharon the volunteer, Sharon the mom, right? Blah, I was going to say blah, 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 but I probably can't say that in a podcast, but you know what I mean, right? And so you just hit it on the head. It's that acknowledgement, right, of something other than me that provides that grace, but it's a choice, right? Do I accept it? I got off on a little tangent there.
No.
That's beautiful, right? So if you, in terms of you, like what gets, you've been through some incredible experiences as an athlete in various, at the national level, at the varsity national level, with the Canada team, like all your journey has been just incredible, right? And so a lot of, what gets you across the bridge, and what do you feel enables others to get across the bridge with you?
I think a big one, which is actually what I've talked about recently with your daughter, I always accept my flaws and my faults. Like that's my number one thing. I will never, as a leader, I will never say that I'm perfect. For example, everyone knew that my fitness wasn't the greatest. So I would never say that I'm so fit and I belong here because, that's my thing. No, I'm here because I have rugby knowledge and I seem to have some good leadership over here. So those things I will always acknowledge that I have flaws, and so do my peers and the teammates and those who I lead. They also have flaws. So again, with the grace, it's grace enough to know that they have flaws as well. They're going to mess up in certain situations. So am I. And my faults, when I make a wrong decision or I do something that may not be tasteful to a group of a group that I'm in, I always acknowledge that. I'm always the one to say, okay, we're not going to, especially with a female team, we're not going to talk about each other behind our backs. We're going to make sure that we get to the point so that we can talk it out. You can tell me how you feel. I can tell you how I feel. But that doesn't negate the fact that what I said or what I did made you feel that way. So it's an acknowledgement of your emotions and the things that I may have brought upon you that may have you feeling a certain type of way. But that's, again, accepting my faults. Another thing I think is like finding my voice in hardship. I think that's a big thing that I was able to do as a leader. I know sometimes when pressure is on people, they seem to either explode or implode. And that to me is where there's pressure, that to me is it's your time to perform, right? So you're trying to show how much you've prepared for this moment or how much you've prepared for situations like this, and your decision making is important, and all these things that may come along. It's you've prepared for this. So finding your voice in those hardships, and I think having people, for example, if you're have confrontation at work, it's sitting down with the right people to make sure that those things are fixed, instead of going about your semester or your school year just letting it eat at you, and that's imploding, right? And exploding would be like just flipping out at anyone or everyone and anyone that would listen, right? It's not fixing the issue. It's not like facing the hardship with the tools and the resources that you have. So
wow, this is awesome. So Joe, one of the things that I talk about a lot is identity. And you've been when you think of who you are and what your sense of values and your understanding of you, that authentic self, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you? Who is
Who
Joe
am
Alphonso?
I? So I'm actually right now, I'm in a little bit of a transition. I just graduated, well, not just, we graduated 3 years ago. But before that, I was an athlete for 17 years of my life. And then graduating in 2020 with my BED, I'm all of a sudden kind of an athlete still, but now I'm a teacher, right? I'm a high school teacher. And then now I'm going back into school. Well, I'm in school now doing my master's, and now I'm a student again. So it's balancing a number of identities for me. And then I'm a leader in my community, right? Taking on coaching roles and doing workshops and things like that. So for me right now, my identity is kind of spread out, and to me that's okay, because when I was just an athlete, and I think the transition from
Don't say
varsity
just
athlete.
an athlete. Pick up the JUST.
Yes.
When you
When I
were
was
an
an athlete, yeah, when I was an athlete, that was the only thing that I found I identified with, right? That was the thing that I felt was my whole sense of being, and that being taken away from you by years, or you're done your eligibility. Now you have to find out who are you at your core, right? Who are you without the accolades, without the teammates, without the coaches, without the articles being written about you and your team? Who are you outside of those things? And that, for me, my transition into teaching, it kind of helped, because I was able to see myself as passing something on to the next generation. And I think that at the core of all the things, the identities I just listed, that's what it is, right? It's me passing something, my knowledge and the years that I had at Ajax doing my undergrad, and then my BED, now my master's, and being an athlete. Like, all those things I've learned, I'm now able to pass it down to the kids that come through my classroom, or the kids I coach on the pitch, and or the community events that I may be at, and hope to inspire someone, if anyone, right? Anyone that'll listen, hope to inspire them, or just be that kind person that lets them know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, or hope at the end of the tunnel, or and that person, I want to be that person of change too, right? Like, knowing that me at my school in Nova Scotia, where I taught for a year and might be going back, so that's exciting. I was the first Black female teacher. I was the first Black teacher, and then the first Black female teacher at that school. And I had Black students in my class. So being that light of representation for them is so important as well. So almost realizing that it's something bigger than myself, that my identity is. I'm not focused on only filling my own cup, but filling others as well, and making sure that they feel seen, they feel wanted, they feel like they can take on those years that I went through and I was able to go through very proudly. They're able to go on to university and post-secondary and be that change. It's like a ripple effect, right? You teach one, they teach others, and hopefully we can amount to change.
Awesome. And it's that authentic, the piece of you that, I've often heard people say, if you're not authentic, right? People can smell authenticity off you, and they get it, right? And the Queen died. I'm just kind of.
I know.
Sad. I didn't think. I'm sad. I'm really sad today. The thing that makes me really sad is her life of service. Like, she completely gave her life to serving the people of the Commonwealth. And I thought to myself, imagine if every day we woke up with that same, right? We know, like, the end is the end.
Yeah.
And what we give and what we do on this earth, and with people as humans, part of a big humanity, a huge human existence, right? Imagine if every day, like, I know people are saying, well, she has 88 kabillion bloody dollars or whatever, but it's about that service, right? That was the choice. She could have done what her uncle did and, abdicated the throne and just went and lived her life, but she chose not to, right? And it's those choices we make, like, you're choosing to go back into an environment where you will make a difference. Like there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And
I like to say sometimes, oh, sorry, Mama Blanche.
No, you don't.
Okay. I like to say sometimes, like, they say like customer service, like you're in the service of people. I actually think like every profession out there is in the service of people.
Yeah.
Everything you do, you're in the service of people, because you're not dealing directly with the computer all the time, or directly with like robots or machines. You're dealing with other people that are around you, so you're always in the business of people, regardless if you're a bartender or you're a professor or you work in the oil rigs. You're dealing with people on a daily basis. So understanding how to be of service for others gives you a sense of self as well, because now you know yourself, that you're that person for them. Maybe you're that kind person to them, or you're that sense of home for someone, that sense of belonging for someone. And that is in itself is an act of service. So I think that every profession is in the profession of people. We also are to serve people. So
beautiful. Thank you. I feel like we're just getting going. I know we're going to have you back. I feel like you and I could just chat forever, right? And we've never had kind of professional chats before.
No, we haven't.
Any just last thoughts before we just kind of move? Well, I don't want to say close or stop. It doesn't feel right. I'm like, I don't want it to end.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Just kind of like as bringing back the leadership, grace, everything. The things that you repeat in your life become your habits, and then your habits become your character, and your character becomes your identity.
Yeah.
So just practicing those little things that might make you a better leader, or might make you a better person to your family or to your friends. Like those little things actually become a part of you if you practice them. If you put them into habit, then it becomes your character. And now people describe you as this, and that becomes your identity, right? So just making sure that we're always practicing those little things that make us better for the whole world, right? So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, my darling. Thank you for joining us. It's
no problem.
And beautiful and so grateful. And I'll be in we need to have you back. We need to see where you are, right? Like
yes, yeah.
And Jo Alphonso is a woman to follow. Right?
Thank you, my friend.
All right, babe. Love you.
Having me.
Okay.
Love you.
See you later.
Well, what a fantastic conversation with Jo. She's such an inspiring woman with the whole world ahead of her. And Grace, her leadership approach is filled with courage. You feel the love and you feel the grace. Thanks for sharing your beautiful pearls of wisdom, Jo. We'll have to have you back, and we'll see where you go. Be sure to tune in next week for a conversation with my old pal, Johnny Simon, joining us all the way from St. John, New Brunswick. We'll see you then.